Dear students, let us come to unit number 3. And in unit number 3, I am going to deal with the poem first. The poem is titled Where the Mind is Without Fear. And this is a very famous poem, as you know, written by a very famous Indian poet, Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore, in fact, needs no introduction because he was a great literary figure who has given India a place in the world literary scene. He had received the Nobel Prize for Literature for his collection of devotional songs collected in a book called Gitanjali. He was a novelist, a short story writer, a dramatist, and also an educationist, a philosopher, thinker, and a nation builder. He is the father of literature in India. He has contributed greatly through his work in nation building. This poem, Where the Mind is Without Fear, is a poem from Gitanjali. It is poem number 35, in which he is praying to God for the freedom for his nation. This poem has been written in pre-independence India. Pre-independence, before independence. That is, before we got independence. And it is this period when the freedom fight was going on, when the struggle was going on, where Rabindranath Tagore knew that the people are divided in India on the basis of caste, community, religion, language. And therefore he prayed to God that during this time, when we are fighting for freedom, O God, let my country be one. Let it come together. Let it strive together. Let it struggle together. Because what is more important? Freedom is more important than anything else. Once you are free, you can soar higher and higher. You can achieve great things in this world. And that was important. The spirit of gaining freedom was very important, and therefore this poem is reflective in its spirit, and it's a simple prayer for the country. Let us come to the poem. I shall read the poem slowly and go on explaining. Where the mind is without fear. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that haven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. This is a small poem, a small prayer, but full of meaning and imagery. The poet begins the poem where he says, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. The poet wants a world where the mind is without fear. There should be no fear. You can understand it was pre-independent India. And there was the fear of the British rule. There was no freedom. People were not free. People were suffering. There were n number of sufferings. And they could not express themselves. And this was a kind of a bondage. And the poet wanted his country to be free from all these things. And he wanted that the people of his country should hold their head high. They should be morally strong. They should be able to hold their head high because they need to strive ahead. They need to march ahead. And when you are in bondage, you can't do these things. So he wants freedom desperately for his people because he wants to see India where knowledge is free. It was a time when knowledge was imparted only to a certain section of the society. Each and every person was not free to get knowledge. Where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. Again, India was divided on the basis of caste, community, religion, language. As I said, these are the narrow domestic walls. Walls which we have created between one person and the other, between one state and the other. And he said, I don't want this kind of a country. I want a country where all people should be able to live together freely, happily, without any fear in their mind. Because fear suppresses you. Fear doesn't allow you to march ahead. And therefore, he wanted a free, independent India, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection. Moreover, he wanted people to be truthful. The words should come out from the depth of truth. Everything that is, done and said in this country should be truthful. Imagine that kind of India. The India of his dreams. The India that he wanted us, to get. Where there is absolute freedom, where there is absolute truth. Now, thinking about India today, you may find that this can only be a dream. But yes, he had that kind of a dream, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection. Whatever you do, you need to achieve that level of perfection. And how should be the process of achieving that perfection? It should be a tireless process, without getting tired. That kind of struggle should be there. That kind of, effort should be there. And your arm should stretch for perfection means in whatever you do, you need to be perfect. You need to achieve that perfection. And to achieve that perfection, you need to have that kind of integrity, that kind of strength, that kind of capacity, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where your reasoning faculty has to be very, very clear. Rational thinking, he expected, because India was, a land of superstition, where many people, they had that dead habit. They were practicing all these outdated things. And therefore, there was every reason that an Indian would go or get carried away into that superstition. And therefore, he wanted that clear reasoning, rational thinking to be practiced in a country where people do not lose their track, where people do not get into that dead habit of, the olden times, the traditional times. He wanted India to be a new country, waking up to a bright future, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action. And he wanted India to be a country where the thought and action go hand in hand. The thought and action, he wanted them to be ever widening. He wanted everything to have a broad horizon. He wanted everything to have a broader sense. He did not want narrow-minded thinking in a new India, in the new country. Into that haven of freedom, my father, let my country awake. And he wanted his country to awake into that world of freedom, and he calls it haven of freedom. Imagine the India that he has painted in this poem, the India of his dreams, is the India which is as good as haven, because there's utmost freedom, absolute freedom, truth everywhere, broad thoughts, open minds. Not only that, but people marching with their heads held high is something which you can only imagine in heaven. And he says, that kind of country I want, Father. Father, F is capital. Address to the Lord, to the God. So it's a prayer to the God. It's a prayer, it's a song where he is worshipping to God. Oh God, let my country be so free that the people in my country would be able to march ahead with open minds, with wild thoughts, with, their actions and thoughts going together, without any superstition, without any narrow domestic walls. So see how beautifully, with different images, the image of a clear stream of reason, then the dreary desert sand of dead habit. In a very metaphorical way, the poet has brought forth his emotions, his feelings through this song. And this poem number 35 is included in a collection of devotional songs called Gitanjali. So this is how we come to the end of this poem. I hope you have enjoyed and you have understood the poem. Please go through the poem again, line by line. Try to understand it. You can again come back to the video. Try to understand the poem and then try to attempt the questions that are based on this poem. Thank you.